I'm going to make a bold prediction, and I'm going to say that there's going to be a huge recession coming in early 2025, and it's going to last about 8 months. And I got some data, and I'm going to want to hear your opinion and see what you think about it, because I got some facts that I want to share with you and see if you feel the same way as I do. So as I'm looking online, and we're constantly reading more articles that says credit card debts and defaults rise in worrying sign for the economy. Financial service business have written off 50% more overdue credit card debt in the past year. So, okay, starting to get rid of some loans, get them off the books. People can't pay. So let's see. Let's see what else we got. Credit card, and look at this graph. US credit card loan defaults jump. So it's almost as bad as it was in 2010 after we came out of the recession in 2008 and 2009 after the huge housing default. So we're almost back to these crazy levels, right? And to top it all off, it's not just that we're in credit card debt and all this other stuff. We're nearly in debt everywhere we look. We're in housing debt. We're in car debt. And look at this one, nearly 1/3 of drivers behind on car loan payments, new report says. And this isn't just some 2020 COVID news article. No, this is from October 8th, 2024. So we're seeing that there's way more worrying signs of stuff coming. And interest rates are still really, really high for home loans, right? And as you can see, they're building all these kind of homes, and they're probably going to go in the millions. And when you're looking at these $1 million home loans, it's always worrisome because all these people that are going to buy these homes right here are going to have new builder incentives. So they're going to have 3-2-1 buy downs. And if you're not familiar with 3-2-1 buy downs, is that the builder basically says, I'm going to buy down your rate a lot at the beginning, and every year it kind of goes up. So there again, you see that the price constantly increases over the 3 years, right? And now you're like, well, rent might be the same, but it is not, because it's at 7%, right? So mortgages are at 7%. And now you're like, okay, we got all these facts out of the way. Why do you think that we're going to see a recession in 2025? Well, one of the main reasons why I think we're going to see this huge recession is that we're going to have a new president and a new party in power. And what do you got to do? And this is just me thinking out loud. And this was kind of makes the most sense for me. And I'm interested to see what you guys think. But if you're the new party in power, you're running from election cycle to election cycle, right? So to stay in power, you got to secure the midterms in the next 2 years, right? So they're up in 2 years, and then you got to secure the votes. You got to do all that kind of stuff, right? And in order to do that, you got to come out now and start saying, oh, this administration that we're having right now messed it all up, and you blame it on the other recession. So the longer you wait with inducing this recession that has been overdue, or at least they haven't come out yet, is going to be really crucial, because the closer it gets to the new election cycle in 2 years from now, then the closer you are of actually losing votes. Because right now what you can say is, you can say, hey, we are gonna do it now and blame it all on Biden, right? The Biden administration, it was all their fault, and they didn't know how to handle the economy. We're gonna do it better. But it's gonna be really hard saying that a year down the line of saying, oh, it was Biden's fault, right? And it's not that believable. But if you can induce the recession right now or in January, February, and start meddling with tariffs and kind of doing all this kind of stuff and saying, you know what, we're just going to induce the recession now, and then all of a sudden you're going to be good at the midterms, because then you can introduce stimulus into the economy and you can say, hey, we're doing better than we did before, so let's keep it the same, right? But if you don't do that and you're going to let it go to shit in 2 years from now, then people are going to be pissed. They're going to vote the whole other way, right? So they want to see a change. They want to see a change in their wallets. They want to see some other change, right? And when I'm looking at all these home builders, I'm looking at these home builders building houses, and credit card debt's just all out of control, right? And you got to save the economy. You got to get people back working. You got to get people to get their paychecks. You got to make sure that people are doing better than they did a few years ago. And now let's watch a video of somebody that is, I think the majority of you guys feel this way. And a lot of people have been texting me and they said they felt exactly like this person. So let's watch this video together and see what she's talking about.
So, my husband and I are $60,000 in debt. We had a good amount of savings and decided that our home that we've been living in for a couple years just needed some maintenance and some upgrades. You can see behind me, we live in like a very normal house, but there were some things like on the outside where our stucco was falling off, so we needed to have that repaired. We had our house painted, we upgraded our bathroom a little bit, and also decided to pay off my husband's private student loan because the interest is not great. And so we had plenty of savings and we decided to just drain those bad boys. We both had really stable jobs. We would be able to squirrel away some money over time and build back up our savings again. 2 weeks later, unexpectedly, I was laid off from my job. And I'm the breadwinner of our household, so it did not go well. I was unemployed for about 7 months. Thank goodness I had social media to keep us afloat for a little bit, but here's the deal. We had to put a lot of stuff on credit card to be able to keep ourselves afloat. So anything that could go on a credit card went on a credit card. And that allowed my husband's income to pay for our mortgage, our car payments, our daycare, things like that. But everything else went on a credit card. We cut back as much as we could, but there's still a lot of expenses. We finally decided to do a debt consolidation loan, and it's about $65,000. And we're gonna try and pay it off. We did a 5-year loan plan, but we're gonna try and pay it off in the next 2 years. That's our goal. One of our kids gets out of daycare this year. We've spent $36,000 a year on daycare. So one of them graduates this year. The other one goes to VPK. So that'll save us a little bit of money. Our hopes are that we're able to put a lot of what we were already paying for daycare towards this loan and get it paid off sooner than planned. But your girl loves to shop, so I'm gonna have to do some shit to keep myself accountable to this. So I'm coming on the internet and telling you what my deepest, darkest secret. Where are you going? Oh. Buying a puppy when you're on $60,000 of credit card debt is not.
Okay, so she actually came out and said having $60,000 in credit card debt is a horrible, horrible idea. And in order to not do that, you need to have stable jobs. And as I've been telling you guys all along, I've been telling you guys since I started this account, don't ever assume your job is guaranteed. It's just not. Unless you're retired and you got insurance and all that kind of stuff, you're in trouble because you can lose your job, right? And you got to get that savings account up so you're not in trouble, right? You got to get your savings up so it will last you. And if you blow your savings on somebody like house remodels, doing all this kind of stuff, then there's just issues going to arise later on if you do lose your job, if you do need something emergency done. And relying on credit cards for an emergency fund is not great. And it is just not. So let's watch another creator talking about what she's doing and how much debt she's in.
I currently have $1,420.86 in my checking account, which means that I just got paid, so let's do a payday routine together. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Chanel. I'm 24 years old, living at home with my parents and working full-time to pay off $92,914.61 in debt. In addition to what's currently sitting in my checking account, I also have $355 in my traditional savings account left over from my last paycheck. This money was sitting in my traditional savings account to act as a buffer in case anything popped up that I did not budget for. Initially, I was going to put this amount towards my high yield savings account. However, I have decided to keep it in my traditional savings account and use it towards my extra credit card payment in the month of January. I have 3 student loans, all 3 of which get automatically deducted from my traditional savings account. So I'm going to transfer $1,097.94 from my checking account to my traditional savings account to ensure that I can make my January student loan payments. After that amount has been transferred, I will have $322.92 left over in my checking account. I only have 2 fixed things that I expect to come up within the next 2 weeks. The first being my Spotify premium subscription for $11.99, and the second being my Acorn subscription for $3. Once those 2 subscriptions have been accounted for, I will have $307.93 remaining in my checking account. Of this amount, I'm going to transfer an additional $125 to my traditional savings account to contribute towards my extra January credit card payment, which will already put my extra credit card payment at $480 before we've even entered the month of January. With all of that considered, I will have $182.92 left over in my checking account to tie me over until my next paycheck in 2 weeks. I anticipate possibly having to fill up my gas tank once between now and then, and I plan on trying to do a
when you see people like that, it just freaks me out. It just literally gives me the chills. If you have $93,000 in student loan debt and they're taking out so much out of your paycheck, and you live in like that where you got to plan when you're going to fill up on gas. This just gives me anxiety. Looking at that just gives me pure anxiety. And people tell me, oh, there's good debt, there's bad debt. And if you own houses, if you own rentals, there's debt. There's debt. And people say, oh, you can use debt to leverage it and all this other stuff. And I say, it all works great till your asset turns into a liability. And your asset can turn into liability in a blink of a dime, right? Your renters stop paying. All of a sudden, the bank's not going to give two shits if you are a homeowner, if your tenant doesn't pay. No, that's your problem. And when I look at people and they say, oh, I own 20 rental units and I got all loans on them and doing all that, and all of a sudden one of them stops paying. You're like, I can make up the first one of them, right? And then the second one stops paying. And now you're like, oh, I'm still making good enough money. I have a savings account. I can start pitching that in. So what people don't understand is that anytime you have rental units, you have stuff that doesn't pay you, it's costing you money to keep it going, right? You still have the maintenance. You still got to pay property taxes. You still have your bills due, and the renter's not paying. So what do you got to do? You got to file eviction notices. You got to start trying to get the money. And filing eviction notices isn't something that comes free, right? The lawyer's not going to say, I'm going to do this for free for you because I like you, Jimmy. So I'm going to do that. No, it costs money. So then you lose opportunity costs. You lose all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden, you're like, hey, I'm doing great though because my other 8s are still paying for it. Well, then goes another one, right? And then all of a sudden you have to sell off assets. You have to sell off assets to pay for liabilities. And you would not be the first person that has been in that situation, right? So you got to be careful. You got to be careful with debt. And that's why I'm like, right now it's not so sure of a time to do crazy investments, right? And now you're like, well, I see these huge corporations do it. Yeah, when you have huge corporations like Lennar, they have shareholders that can do it. They can refinance their debt. They can redo a whole bunch of stuff. But you, as an individual person, cannot. You don't have those resources as they do. Lennar probably has lawyers on retainers that pay $2,000 an hour. If somebody trips and falls here with Lennar, they have insurance. And then if insurance doesn't kick in, they have other liability waivers, and they have huge legal teams, right? That other people do not. So if you have tenants and have all this other stuff going on, you got to be careful because it can turn into liabilities real quick. And yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's like, man, debt, even though you go to college and you do all that, nothing's guaranteed. And the funny part is that me and Ali have a career where we help people with their careers, and we have AI tools that help them and do all this kind of speed up the process. And people say, am I guaranteed anything? And I say, what are you talking about, a guaranteed? It's like, well, I want a guarantee. And I say to him, what's guaranteed in life? There's two things if you live in the United States that are guaranteed: death and taxes. Everything else is optional. And yeah, you're like, oh, crazy, right? But that's just how life is. You make calculated decisions and hope for the best outcome, for the best practices, because people just hope and say, hey, we're going to do this. And then they're like, oh shit, it didn't go this way. So you need an emergency fund. You need money set aside in cases stuff goes bad. And weathering out a recession is going to be really interesting, because these houses might go on sale because there's a recession, right? So if you want to be a homeowner and you're like, I'm waiting, you're going to see the recession come. And once the recession hits, stuff has to go on sale, just like supply and demand. During COVID, I remember cars were premiums, and people got cars, people got loans, people did a whole bunch of crazy stuff to them, right? They got cars, they got Escalades, they were paying $1,000 a month in rent or $1,500, and they got a car loan for $1,000. Then they called the lender the next day, said, oh, I'm in distress. Oh, you don't need to make payments for 8-9 months. Okay, great. And then 8-9 months comes along, and you're like, let me refinance the loan and let me play the same game again. And you haven't made a payment in like quite some time, right? A year or so. You could defer payments depending on how you rolled them around and did a whole bunch of stuff. And now you're like, oh shit, my car loan's hugely upside down, right? And then credit cards starting to pile up, and just the debt. And I'm telling you, the debt is just what cripples your spending, what cripples the economy, right? Because what are you going to do? She's not going to go out. This creator that I saw, she's not going to go out and do lavish purchases, right? She's not going to go, if you're in the jet ski rental business in Florida, she's not going to rent a jet ski, right? Or if you're a bakery down the road, she's not going to go there. She's going to go to where the cheapest spot is, right? It doesn't matter how good or how bad it is, or she's going to bake her bread at home because she just doesn't have the money. And I'm telling you, just because you get an $80,000, $90,000 credit card limit doesn't mean that you have that money. And that's like, and people tell me, oh, that's obvious. Then tell that everybody else. And tell that, scream it from the comment section and tell it everybody else. And share this video with a bunch of those people that don't know. Because just because you know doesn't mean that everybody else does it, because then we'd be in a lot better shape, because these people that are spending hundreds on just interest, or making just the minimum payment of $25 or $100 a month, it's going to take you years to pay it off. So you basically just stole from your future. If you spend money now that you can't afford, you're basically robbing yourself from your prosperous future. And that's why I'm saying it is going to be super crucial for this administration to induce the recession right now as soon as they hit office, so they can blame it on the previous president. And once the midterms come around, people are getting jobs again, people are getting hired, there's investments, and people see, oh, this is going the way I want it to go. And if they can say that and people actually feel it in their wallets and people are making more, then they're like, you know what we did in the last election is great, let's keep this thing going. But if this is going to become a disaster and they're trying to float it and there's no news coming out that we're in a recession and people aren't feeling it, what they're going to do, then they're going to be like, nope, let's go back to the old way. And there's a swing, right? From right to left, left to right, and everything else, right? Because that's how you get the votes. You get the votes with making people feel on their wallet. And I know people say, oh, the southern border is an issue and all abortions, all these kind of crazy topics are an issue. But if you cannot feed your family and you're a normal American with not a lot of money, right? Then you got to make sure that your family can eat, that your family has a roof over the head, that you don't become homeless. So when you're like, oh, we got to do universal health care, we got to do all that, those are all great. But I truly, truly think that the number one thing is to put food on the table for families. Let me know if you agree with this. Because I always feel like if you're working 40, 60, 70 hours a week and you can't make a decent living and you're still drowning in debt and doing all that, it's just not looking good for you. It's just not. You just got to get the rolling. You got to get the career track going. And people in my comment section have always been like, oh, the career track is just, getting a career, it's just a fancy name and you can't do it. Yeah, you can. You can, because people that say stuff like, oh, career tracks and all this other stuff is nonsense. You can outcompete them, right? That's what I love about a free market in the US. If they say, oh, I'm not going to participate, well, you can. And you can go out and do it. And you can go out and go into crazy debt. You can do whatever you want. And this is what I love about the US. You're the captain of your own ship. If you want to go out and get a credit card and then load it up on fancy dinners, you could do that. Is it smart? Probably not. But hey, who knows? You're the master of your own ship, right? So it's a gorgeous day out. Lennar is building houses like here crazy. I just live down the street. And it's funny to me to see that all these places are going to be developed. All these lots are going to be developed. And when I'm seeing it, like, okay, let's see how many lots there are. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 lots, right? So 13 lots, all these houses are going to go for $1 million plus. And it's going to be really, really interesting because as you drive down around this area where I live in, they'll say rate buy downs, all this other stuff. So you're going to own, the first year of ownership is going to be the cheapest it's ever going to be. Then it's going to be a little bit more expensive. And the third year is going to be expensive till the fourth year where you're going to pay the price as long as you're going to own the mortgage unless you refinance. But if they're going to refinance it, down the road, you can get a lower interest rate and all that kind of stuff. But as it is now, it's not looking like they're gonna lower interest rate that much. And so you're gonna have to be able to afford these places. And I don't know who can actually afford all these $1 million homes, because you can afford them in the first 4 years. And afterwards it jumps and it's your normal interest, right? And you gotta be able to make that $200,000, because it should only take about 30% of your income, and then the rest goes towards maybe a car, maybe a family, maybe some other stuff you have going on, right? And so let me know what you guys think. And yeah, this was it for me, and I'll see you in the next one.